start the live stream and then I'll spin it around.
We'll behave.
Hey guys, KK, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty trying to get the live stream for the Zoom. So I'm just going to record it. It's not going to be as good of quality, but at least you can see it live. And then Heather says that she'll connect us with a link later so that you can watch it later. But I want you guys to at least see the recording of what we're saying when we're saying it so that you can make comments if you want to. So I'm going to spin this around. And again,
all right,
kind of secondary. I have to figure out how to prop it up, but you're right ahead. We're on.
There we are. Okay. Hey guys, Heather Hammerstead here from Boise, Idaho. We have some of our Baffords from New York here joining us here today. And we're just going to be super informal like we have been with all of these others. And just, you know, just try to talk a little bit about what we're seeing, what we wish that we would have known a couple of weeks ago, and really kind of dive into some clinical care today, I think would be really awesome. So much of our other conversations have been around how to protect ourselves and what sort of logistics we were trying to do with the hospital system. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves? We all know KK, our mama bear, who's keeping us all well, wearing her sporty new hat, which mine are hopefully in the mail to me. And Cameron, why don't we start with you? Why don't you tell us who you are and what you've been up to?
Thanks for inviting me. My name is I'm Cameron Kyle-Sidell. I'm a ER trained and critical care trained doctor working in Brooklyn, New York at Maimonides Hospital. Initially, I was working in the ICU, but for the last 2 weeks have been, you know, our ICUs are all full. Actually, we opened like 5 new ones and they're all full. So now the ER has become, you know, an ICU as well. So I'm running a team and we're essentially, we call it the emergency department admitting team. So we're actually admitting patients as ER doctors and all the boarded patients waiting for ICU beds. And we're actually keeping all of the high flow patients that come to the hospital are staying in the ER until they are either off high flow or intubated because there's really no place on the floor where they can go. So that's what I'm doing now.
Comilla and Mike, you want to say hello?
Sure. I'm Mike Wilson. We are broadcasting from New York. We are in the Billie Jean King Tennis Center training facility here. We have set up a 470-bed field hospital here. I'm from Tyler, Texas. I'm a community physician that does some of the fun stuff, tactical medicine, event medicine, EMS, that sort of thing. And I popped off at the wrong time here, and so I'm the medical director out here now. And so I'm kind of running the clinical aspects of the facility here. And so that's been really interesting and a lot of challenging and fun, and, you know, learning about combating COVID outside of the hospital.
Yep. Oh, we can't hear you very well. I could hear Mike really well, but there you go.
Well, Sasson, I'm an emergency medicine physician as well. I get to work for Mike for the next month of my life. So I don't know, there's probably something that you guys should probably tell me right now that I haven't learned already in the last week. And I actually took leave from the Heart Association, where I work full time, to come here and spend a month out here to help and really just to learn what field hospital medicine is like, because it's completely different than anything else I've ever seen or experienced before.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks you guys for taking this break from regular life and going to help out our colleagues there. And Caleb, you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Thanks. Yeah, so my name is Caleb Hernandez, and I'm a board certified emergency doc. I trained at Maimonides where Cameron's working, and so I got done there, you know, back in 2007. And you know, now I'm here in New York. I'm actually helping out at Coney Island Hospital, which is south of there. It's the end of the line. If you guys have ever watched the movie Warriors, that's pretty much Coney Island. So it's kind of neat to be in Brooklyn again, helping out. But I definitely have to say everything Cameron said was correct. It's overwhelmed with people that have this one disease, this infectious disease, and it's a very hard-hitting disease, and it's changed the way we have to do medicine. And so, yeah, you're pretty much wearing all hats. If you're an ER doc, you're boarding ICU patients and managing them for days. You're boarding patients who are step down and managing them for days. You're managing the tent outside with patients who are coming in and not as sick, and, you know, trying to get them in and out. you're doing a lot of jobs and you're trying to figure out what works, trying to make sense of the blood works. So yeah, it's definitely a different environment, and it's just imagine having epic downtime with all the hallway beds full, and then some kind of flex disaster going on, and it's just going on for weeks. You know, that's the best way to say it. So, and you come the next shift and you come back and it's happening again. That's what it's like. So just take all those difficulties that you've ever had and just throw them all into one, and that's kind of the status quo.
So what have you guys done logistically in terms of, you know, just workforce to be able to manage all of that, Cameron and Caleb? I mean,
essentially all, you know, our ER prepared to be able to triple the size of the staff within 2 hours or 1 or 2 hours. So we have everyone on staff. We have a surge team. All vacations have essentially been canceled. That includes the residents too. So it really is sort of all hands on deck. Now, the strange thing is, I don't know where all the other diseases went, but you know, our ER is essentially half the volume it was. It's just all COVID. So I hope everyone else is doing okay, because I don't know where they're going. So we're basically, it's just kind of all hands on deck.
Yeah, you never thought you'd miss your cyclic vomiters, right?
Yeah, I can't wait for a real GI bleed. It's amazing.
Right. Yeah. And Caleb, what about you guys? I know you have a residency program too, which probably helps.
Yeah, so I could definitely say that when it comes to the to what we're doing there in Brooklyn or Coney Island, it's the same thing. I think you just have to realize you can't practice medicine the way that you're used to practicing medicine. Your volumes are going to sort of, their census is up 300%. It's not up 20%. It's not up 40%. It's up 300%. So you can't use all the fancy drips. You can't, if you're using fentanyl and propofol to sedate somebody who's intubated, you got to ask yourself why you made that nurse a 1-to-1 and why you're using such a short-acting medicine on top of another short-acting medicine. It's just, you don't have enough drips to go around. You don't have enough vents to go around. You basically have to practice medicine like you would in the disaster zone, because it is a disaster zone. So now for me, with the residents, I've gone around and said, hey, you know, how could we sedate this patient for the next 4 hours without using some kind of fancy drip, because we don't have a lot of them. And so you got to go back to stuff that was popular, you know, and you know, I worked with some old guys when I got out of residency. They're all Vietnam vets, and they had these, you know, this different way of doing things, and you had to go back to that style of medicine. You know, you have to give people, you know, 3 to 4 milligrams of Ativan and vecuronium, and that's it for the vet. You know, you got to do stuff like that. You can't have somebody on fancy drips. You know, as far as other interventions, you need to figure out what works. You know, if you can't use nebulizers because it's going to infect the air and aerosolize what's going on, then you have to use an alternative. And so I think what I'm seeing is that there's certain things that are efficient, and you need to do the efficient things, because you just have to accept the fact that people are going to die, and the perfect is the enemy of the good. So let's save as many people as we can.
Cameron, what do you have to add to that? What are your choices for sedation and other kind of common things that you're doing?
So, I mean, I think in terms of New York hospitals, we were doing a little bit better. Our administrators somehow have been able to secure supplies. I mean, you have to get a little bit into the management of the patients, but, you know, I happen to really believe that dysynchrony in this specific case is very harmful to the patients. And so we tend to just over sedate them, whether it's with boluses or drips or anything. You know, typically in the ICU, when someone's intubated, you want to kind of keep them awake, you know, preserve their sleep-wake cycle, yada, yada. But in this case, it's just, these are long vent runs, you know, and especially in the ER when, you know, it's not 1-to-1 nursing and it's 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 or 6-to-1, or, you know, a lot of times you can't find their nurse because they're with another sick patient. I mean, I think that just we have leaned on over sedation. However we can achieve that, yet at the same time, every day, you know, we might be running out of different medications. So you just have to be flexible, you know. So we started to check with the pharmacy in the morning and see what we had, and kind of get it around what we're using that day and what our strategy is. You know, and then if there's a synchrony, we're pretty quick to push, to do rock pushes, and we were able to get, we ran out of pumps for a little while. We've been doing okay lately. So, you know, as far as a clinical entity, we really want to avoid dysynchrony and agitation and so forth. And so we've just been kind of, however we're trying to achieve it, we're trying to keep patients, once they are intubated, just keep them down.
Can you talk to us a little bit about kind of your ventilation strategy?
Yeah, so, I mean, I went into this, it goes into a little bit of what you know, the hard thing with this disease is it's hard to know, like if anyone has spent time around it, it's hard to know what is going on. It's just, it's highly unusual. And for me, I think ER doctors are really the ones that are seeing a ton of it, because it's this decision about when you're going to intubate a patient, which is so confounding. And I feel like until you have faced that extremely perplexed, confused state, it's hard to realize that this is something different than we've seen. And especially our hospital has taken to high flow, which I know there's a lot of concern that it may be aerosolizing things. That for some reason we just embrace it. In our whole ER, there's like high flow patients everywhere. They're not in negative pressure rooms. That, you know, the curtains aren't even closed. It's just, that's where we've gone. And especially if they're on high flow, you're watching patients that are extremely hypoxemic. I mean, if they knock off their high flow, they will desat to 20 within minutes, you know, and that's why we have to keep them in the ER if we're riding them that far, you know. So my ventilation strategy that I've been promoting among our emergency department admission team is essentially, when they're intubated, they all seem to have pretty good compliance. And what we're trying to do is just like an oxygen first strategy. So we're keeping their FiO2 at 100%, and we're trying to give as little PEEP as possible in order to achieve an acceptable sat. And what is extremely hard, I think, is what is an acceptable saturation.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is the single thing like that is really just if we demand a sat of 92, we're going to have to put the PEEP up to 20. There's no other way. You know, they're on a, you know, their FiO2 is 100%, and they're satting sometimes, you know, 75 or something. So we are putting them at as little PEEP as possible. So essentially, like, you know, 5 to 7, and tolerating a sat above 80 in the beginning. And they were talking to us at 80. You know, this is the difficult thing, you know, and we're essentially not going over a PEEP of 8 to 10 without thinking about it. You know, so if they're on a PEEP of 10 and they're sitting with a sat of like, you know, 71, then we say, okay, we think it's more injurious for them to sit with a sat of 71 than to increase their PEEP, which could possibly be inducing some lung injury. But most people are on a PEEP of like 8 to 10, you know, 6 to 10, and FiO2 of 100% in the very beginning, and they seem to be doing okay. It's just really like a gentle, everything seems to be gentle is better, which is very opposite of, you know, I trained in Detroit. I feel like we were extremely aggressive emergency medicine training, and you just like want to get stuff done quick, fast. And these people don't heal quickly. Like it's like a 10, 14, I mean, we have people on high flow for like 7 days and they're still having fevers, you know, and we're still like, you get to know these patients and, you know, you're still deciding, should I intubate them? By this time, you know them very well, you know, and you know their kids, and you know that, and you've rooted for them. So it's just, it's a very difficult disease that just, I think, requires like a gentle, calm approach, you know, gentle on the patients, be gentle on yourself, because you don't know if you're doing the right thing a lot of the time. So that's generally how I've approached ventilation and kind of everything else.
What about volumes? Any difference on volumes from what we're classically trained to do?
So generally, you know, it's like 4 to 8 or 4 to 6 is really the ARDS. So what we're doing more is like in this compliance stage is we're giving like 6 to 8, you know, so it's, most people are like, and really a lot of it, if you look at like driving pressures, these things, like they seem to be in a compliant state. And part of it is you want to get them oxygenation, you know, so rather than going up on the PEEP, we're giving slightly higher volumes. So if it was just like a flat out anything for anyone newly intubated, we're basically doing an FiO2 of 100%, a PEEP between like 5 to 10, no more than 10 we try. Sometimes we have to. Volumes like 6 to 8, and always an FiO2 of 100%.
Are you proning? Are you able to do that in the emergency department?
So we're proning before we intubate. So
Whoa.
on a high flow, we are proning patients. And again, high flow is hard. It provides a tremendous amount of oxygen, but really like I've almost gone to like derma bonding it to their face. Cause like, but I haven't yet, but we tape it down. Luckily, most of their mental capacity is good. So they know they need it. But it's just, it really, if it falls off, you know, the death spiral will start.
Yep.
And that's a little concerning. So, but we prone them. The only thing about proning, like, is it just is not sustainable. It doesn't seem to be sustainable. So, you know, if they're satting 79 and you turn them over and now they're 95, like you might turn them back and then they're going to be like, you know, 74. So it really is just like buying time. The unfortunate thing is it just feels like you're buying time in a disease that you don't understand. You don't know when it's going to stop. You don't know it's going to be 10 days, 14, 16. So you're just like, really the like not knowing things is just it's just a world I don't think we're used to working in. It's a strange.
Have you seen any of them actually leave yet?
Yeah. So no, we have like a decent amount of patients on high flow. We'll, you know, when we started it, because we're pushing them a little further, we thought if we can save 30% of the people that don't need to be intubated, that's a success. And then if we can shave off, you know, 2 to 4 days on the other ones, and that's kind of what we're seeing. I think we might be seeing them a little bit more. It's hard. I mean, really, it's like it's a long disease, but you know, we are seeing successes, and we are seeing people that would, I am almost sure, certainly have died if they were intubated just because of their overall, you know, comorbid status. But yeah, no, there are success stories, but it's like, you just have to give it time. You know, we started the emergency department triage team like a week and a half ago. And it's like, you know, everyone was getting a little down because you didn't see success stories, but it takes a while. So we have patients, it's like 8 days, 9 days, they're in the ER, you know, and now they're starting to get better, you know? So it's everything. You just have to be patient.
It's just like buying time to like see to let it run its course, right?
Yeah, until someone finds some drug that works, which it just doesn't seem like we got that yet.
Yeah.
Well,
Caleb, go ahead.
We got something. So when I first showed up to Coney Island, they didn't have the whole disaster team show up. I got a call, hey, things are desperate. Half our docs are down. Half the nurses are sick. And I show up and you got nursing to patient ratios of 17 and 20 to 1. Yeah, I'm just going to be honest. And you know, and you got people running around and, you know, every monitor's going off like a pinball machine. You just got bing, 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 bing all over the place. And you got patients that are so weak from this disease and the SATs are low and the monitors are going off because they're hypoxic, they're hypotensive. And they're so weak, they can't get up out of bed and they're peeing and pooping themselves. And there's not enough people to even take care of that. So you're just walking into this environment and everybody's coughing and everybody's got it. And you have 2 to 3 people in each room and a couple people outside of each room. It was just crazy. You know, so you show up to this and you're just like, okay, this is nuts. And so when I first showed up, I would say that, you know, when we're tallying what's going on, we're getting about 11 people dying in a 12-hour shift. So, you know, if you're watching this, when's the last time you practiced medicine and somebody was like, if you get somebody that dies on your shift, you're like, okay, that's, you know, usually you can sometimes get through a shift without somebody dying, right? You know, or you can go a long time, you know, we're good at resuscitation. We're good at all this stuff. This last week, we tried some things at Coney Island and our death rate went from about 10 to 11 per 12-hour shift to about 1 to 2. And we started sending people home that were going down the downward spiral. They were actually able to improve. And what we started giving them, there's this medicine, Singular, Montelukast. It's a leukotriene inhibitor. And, you know, it's the reason I looked into it, there's a study that was done in the University of Virginia where they were able to prevent different forms of viral pneumonia from occurring in viral infection. And this is a viral pneumonia. That's why this destroys your lungs. And so, you know, I had people who were going in that same downward spiral because you watch it and it's just a natural history. One of the guys I does in that I does at my residency when I was training Lawrence Haynes. He's up in Manhattan, and he's practicing there. And he said the same thing. You sit around and you just absorb the fact that everybody's at a different stage of this downward spiral, and they all got the same thing. They're all coughing and they're all circling the drain. They're just at a different thing, and you understand this. And gave him the montelukast. This one guy, he was in the 80s, another guy who was in the 80s, and they're weak and they can't get out of bed. And one of these guys was a complainer. I gave him the montelukast, gave the other guy montelukast about 10 in the morning. By 6 p.m., their oxygen setting 93%. And they're like eating sandwiches and want to go home. And I was like, no way, that's just a fluke. So the next day, I tried the same thing. I'm like, okay, let's try some of this montelukast. I had this big guy, this big guy, about 370 pounds. And I'm like, I don't want to intubate him. And he's on 15 liters, and he's been admitted now 28 hours, and he's on the corner of his bed, tripoded, and just like sitting there. And I see him, and he's doing this thing where his eyes are rolling, and I'm just like, oh, okay, this is gonna be bad. And I just like, and this monitor's been going off for hours, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give him the montelukast. And I listened to him, and he just sounds like he's not moving a lot of air. And I thought, I don't hear wheezing, but he's not moving a lot of air. Let's give him 0.4 milligrams of atropine. So I gave him atropine and montelukast. Within 30 minutes, he goes from being in the 80s on 15 liters to being 96, 97. And he calls me over afterwards. The nurse didn't want to give the atropine. She says, you're going to push it. I was like, it's atropine. She's like, you're going to push it. I'm not going to do this. But I pushed it, and we got all this stuff. He calls me over. He says, doctor, what was that medicine you gave me? And I told him, and he says, before you did that, he says, I just called my kids to say goodbye for the very last time. He says, and after I took it, he says, after you gave it to me, I have hope I'm going to make it through the night. And so I think that what I've noticed from this infection is that it affects every single organ system. We got people coming in with strokes. We got people coming in with brain bleeds. We have people coming in with splenic infarcts. We have people coming in with DVTs and PEs from this COVID. I mean, it's serious. You're seeing this when you put a central line in and you get the blood out, it looks black, brownish black. And there's, it's the really sick ones come in, they have hypernatremia, and you're looking at 159 to 180 sodiums. They have potassiums, you get the potassium back, and it's like, holy cow, it's like 5.9, it's 6. Well, get an EKG, go get it. And the EKG doesn't look too bad. And then you get another person, 7.8 potassium, and get an EKG, and the EKG doesn't look as bad as you would expect. And they have hypernatremia, hyperpotassium. They have osmolarities that are all off, C-reactive proteins through the roof, D-dimers that are completely up. And then you get this, and hypotension. So I started thinking, there's got to be something that's going on with this, like some kind of adrenal insufficiency or something where maybe they're throwing clots into their adrenal glands. We know they're hurting their kidneys. A lot of these people are getting rhabdo. So I thought, let's try to fix this. Maybe some vasopressin, because we ran out of pumps. So the ingenuity, necessity is the mother of ingenuity. We're out of pumps. The nurses are like, okay, this patient's got a blood pressure of 60 over 40, and so does that one, and so does that one, and we don't have any pumps. So I said, okay, let's start giving them all vasopressin intramuscular. You can do that every 6 to 8 hours. So we do 5 units, 10 units. Next thing you know, the blood pressures are in the 120s. These couple people I thought were going to make it. This one homeless guy, he's got a bunch of other comorbidities, come in the next day. First day, he got Coca-Cola urine. Next day, it clears up. I'm like, holy cow, what's going on with this vasopressin? But he made it. And I wasn't expecting him to make it. we got a bunch of people that, what we found is that by using intramuscular epinephrine for people who are really struggling to breathe, if they're not struggling, you just go to the atropine 0.4 and you give montelukast. Using Zithromax as well. Hydroxychloroquine has not done anything. The medical people keep on adding it, the medicine guys and the ICU guys, and I think it makes things worse. Like I've noticed that it does absolutely nothing for the people who are acutely sick. But yeah, the epinephrine, the atropine, the montelukast, and the vasopressin seem to be some of the meds that are working on these patients.
Are you guys anticoagulating anybody?
Yeah, we are, but yeah, I'd say there's antivirals that I think are working too. There's you know, like you said, we're anticoagulating people. We're putting them on heparin, Lovenox, and doing that kind of stuff. I don't know if it helps or not. I really don't. I mean, all I know is that the big thing is I'm trying to keep people from dying from hypoxia. That's what I'm doing. And if I can keep enough of them from dying from hypoxia, I think I feel good about what's gone on.
Yeah, we're in general, we're anticoagulating. So everyone is getting a 60, it's sort of a high prophylactic dose. So everyone's getting 60 BID of Lovenox. And if they have renal failure, they're still getting Lovenox, but just 40 BID. What that number is, you know, I don't really know. I think I wrote down on a protocol like a creatinine of 2, but that's just completely arbitrary. I don't think anyone really knows. We know that later on in the ICU, they tend to clot all over the place. And so that's why we're doing it. I did hear about Singulair from another friend of mine. I may try it all on everyone tomorrow. It's no, this is why really it's I heard about it and I tried it on one person. I think then he was like intubated shortly after, and then I kind of have a scope on me, so I'm trying not to do too much stuff that you know. But
we started giving it across the board to everybody in the tent, so everybody in the tent gets it, and you know, very few of those are getting sick enough that they have to come into the ER. So we have the tent outside, and you know, honestly, if you look at the safety profile of montelukast, you know, the infant dose I think is like 4 milligrams. The adult dose is 10. It's you know, it's pretty safe stuff. You know, that really the only contraindication is allergy to montelukast. And honestly, I've never used montelukast in my life.
No,
you know, I've been practicing. You know, it's like for me, I've always thought it's what's that, Kay?
I was just saying, I just remember on my pediatric rotations, that's about the only time I've even used it.
When I first heard about it, I had to actually look up what kind of medication it was. So,
Comilla and Mike, can you talk to us a little bit about kind of the tent you guys are in, or and what, you know, you had some information you wanted to share about deploying and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. One thing I was kind of like, now we've been on shift all day, and so I'm at like the end of my rope from like wrangling cats. I want y'all to imagine Caleb and Cameron with these long like lists of things that they're doing and just throwing stuff out there, pulling it out of their ear and just say, we're going to do this and we're going to, you know, Caleb listed the entire medicine cabinet and all. Now I want you to imagine that times like 40 or 50 practitioners showing up all at once from different parts of the country who've never met each other. And we've got to get on the same page of how we are going to treat this disease here. Like, you know, we got to try and find some guideline, because we can't have, you know, the internist doing one thing and we were already running into some trouble of like so many cooks in the kitchen just, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and not even considering what might be in our deployed pharmacy. I mean, we're not in the hospital. You can't get that. You can't get this. And so one thing that I encourage everybody to do when and if they go and do this is to come with a huge dose of humility, because whoever sits in my position is a really unfortunate person, okay? Because at some point in time, you got to tell everybody to shut up, all right? And it's really uncomfortable. We finally had to do it yesterday. I spent the first week that I was here trying to get everybody's buy-in on different stuff. We don't have any proof that anything exactly works. This is the first time I'm hearing about montelukast, you know? I mean, and we've dug through, we had our medicine colleagues really dig through some stuff. Like, I need you 3 folks to go find everything you can. Plus, we're here in New York City, right? So we got to kind of when in Rome, do kind of like what's being done in the hospital system that we're serving, instead of just, you know, I can't haul a hyperbaric chamber out here and go, hey, this is going to be a great idea. Let's give this a shot. You know, they're going to look at me like I'm crazy. And so from the medicine aspect, that has been probably my biggest difficulty and frustration, is trying to come up with how we're going to treat the disease here, you know, and that's really, really hard to do when there's a bunch of great ideas and we don't have, you know, any data. Like, you know, Caleb was just like, oh, hydroxychloroquine, you know, and then our people are like, hydroxychloroquine, get rid of the azithro. We don't need the azithro. We got EMDOCS on our team. And like, you know, I'm an ER doctor, you know, and that's not my thing, but the ID folks say the latest literature is let's not do that, whatever literature is right now. So that's been like one of my biggest frustrations. I don't know.
Well, you know, I think this is the first time we've really been in a place where we don't have any kind of prevention. We don't have a vaccine. We don't have any cure. We don't have a treatment. And I think we are kind of flying blind, right? Because everyone experiences their surge. We're trying to learn as we go. And I think we're rapidly evolving. And what we say yesterday is probably not going to be true today. And I think as a researcher, that's my kind of background. And I came in with a lot of great ideas. many great ideas, and which I had to learn very quickly. You got to figure out how to fall in line and how to figure out, you know, how do you bring ID, emergency medicine, internal medicine, ICU, anesthesia all together and figure out one protocol to work by.
Let's not forget the surgeon that's running around going, oh my gosh, they got a thrombus in their portal vein. Give a hoot right now, you know, like they're not breathing, you know. And I'm not joking, I'm not insulting those people, but these are the dynamics that you're thrown into all of a sudden, because these recruiting agencies are hauling anybody in here with a medical degree. We have a pathologist. I mean, these aren't bad people, but it is quite an experience if you are going to go out there and give this a shot somewhere at a field hospital somewhere. Be ready for a lot of discussion and just at some point in time, just to be quiet.
Yeah,
No,
I mean, I think what's interesting is what you're basically describing the problem with the way that we run any sort of disaster situation, right?
True.
Like, so I was in Haiti right after the 2010 earthquake for a month and a half, when we were putting up little Eddie Bauer tents to like put all of the post-surgical patients in, and like making our own pharmacies and stuff like that. And it's the same thing. It's like when people are coming who don't have a background in terms of understanding what having very little does, and how to communicate and how not to step on toes and how to, you know, be humble like that. I mean, that's basically the problem that we have in every one of these situations. This just happens to be in the middle of fucking New York City, you know?
And I think if I could offer, we talked about this earlier today, any real good piece of advice as far as mental preparation for all emergency physicians. If you're going to go and make disaster relief part of your career, learn the incident command structure. There's terminology like we deploy, we redeploy, there's incident commanders, and so FEMA has a whole set of courses that you can do online. You get your little certificate, put it on your CV, but you learn how to, they're very militaristic, government-run operations. It's not like working in the hospital where everybody gets a vote. You just kind of sit on teams and chit-chat for a while. It's like, hey, doc, we need to move now. What are we going to do? And so, and some people really get into that kind of stuff. Some people don't, and they just want to help. And so that's difficult language for them to understand sometimes.
When we came in with very frenetic energy, that's what ER doctors.
Yeah, we're the worst.
Yeah, like you have to be on a journey, a mental journey, which is that you think you're going to do this, and then at the end of the day, you probably are going to do this, but you're going to have to figure out how to get there. And so I think some people get there sooner, some people get there later, and I think it just, to what you were saying, Heather, I think it's really just about, you know, you have one idea of what you're going into and what you actually have to do to get things done and to actually make things happen, maybe completely outside of your scope of practice and may not even have anything to do with being a doctor.
Yeah,
Quite honestly.
A lot of that. You got to be willing to put together wheelchairs, walk patients around, do PT, all that kind of stuff.
Whatever it takes.
I mean, I'll tell you, really, this disease like flips your hospital upside down. And I cannot like stress, like, really, we're talking about like, when I mean there's no place in a hospital for like a COVID patient without a monitor, patients, we're not admitting patients because they look great, you know, and if we admit a patient and they're on 4 liters, there's a very good chance that tomorrow they're going to be on 15 liters and the next day they're going to need to be intubated. And it's just like a progressive disease. So really they all need to be monitored, but our hospitals don't have full monitored beds. That's just not how it is. So, I mean, we were talking about, can we admit someone to internal medicine? If they get worse, bring them down to the ER. You should have seen like people's face when I suggested that, you know, but it's like, it requires like an entire flip. I mean, it's just, you know, we're used to having
Totally.
500 people with 100 diseases that we know how to treat. We have several hundred people with a disease that we don't know how to treat, you know, and it's really just what it does.
It's really long too, right? Like you guys are
It's
treating
really
them
long.
for a long, long time. Like that's not something we're used to. Like
No,
you can't just kick these people out because they're starting to look a little bit better, because you don't know where they are on that curve, right?
Yeah.
Like they could be going up or down, and it's hard. It's hard to predict.
Yep.
Yeah.
The whole world has turned upside down.
Yeah.
I have to say, it's absolutely true about putting these patients on monitors. You might think that somebody doesn't look like they need it. And we had a 41-year-old guy, hey, I want to go to the bathroom, goes to the bathroom and codes in the bathroom. We had, you know, this another lady, she was in her 50s, went up, coded. And you wouldn't think so, because 1 minute they're sitting there telling you they want to eat some food. And, you know, they're in a hallway bed, but you've checked their SATs and the SATs look all right, you know, so you have them on their oxygen, or you have them on, you know, okay, you're going to go, but there's nobody to take them to the bathroom. And you're sitting here and you're cleaning them up, you're getting them sandwiches, you're doing all those things, or else it's not going to get done. And the patients don't know who's the doctor and who's the nurse, because, you know, everybody's wearing PPE. So we started writing our names on the back of our shirts so people can see who it is. You know, it was take a Sharpie and you put Dr. So-and-so, just so the nurse knows who you are, because half the people I'm working.
Say, and
Yes.
some nurse, and yeah, that's why I made them, because we're covered up.
Yeah,
It's actually,
it's absolutely.
It's that reason Caleb's talking about that. You know, I've heard the term, you know, a lot of people talking about this happy hypoxemic, and I don't necessarily like that term, because I sometimes think it leads people to believe that they are not profoundly sick, even if they are on their phone. You know, what happens, it seems to me, is it's a progressive hypoxemic disease that they kind of adapt to. And then at some point, you know, these SpO2s, like these saturations match their PaO2s. Like their PaO2s are low. We've done enough blood gases, man. They are low. And at some point they just fall off a cliff. And so, you know, that's it, everything. It's like everything in the hospitals flipped around, everything about our treatment models. Like, you know, we were bringing people up the ICU and just diuresing them, because that's what we do in ARDS. We diurese them to get their lungs dry and try to get them off the vent. And it turns out, like, I think probably a lot of these people are hypovolemic, you know, which kind of makes sense, because they've had fevers of 105 for however many days and they're breathing 55 times a minute. So, you know, we've had a lot of people that coded when they're going to take a crap, you know, it's true. And then we realize, like, you know, probably they're valsalving and they're having decreased preload, and boom. So, you know, now we're trying to, everything's flipped. So now we're trying to keep people with, you know, supposedly, you know, with lung issues more, you know, we're trying to keep fluids going in them and not keep them dry. It's just, everything is completely just flipped, you know, and that's what's hard. We, instead of being aggressive, we just got to try to be like gentle, kind of listen to the patient. Why, I mean, it feels like sometimes, I did some work in Haiti too, and it's like, sometimes it's just like, although you need the monitor, you know, so actually if you can get anything, which you can't get now because they're not on Amazon, but just those finger pulse oxes, which used to be $10 and now are like $50, are extremely, like, really everyone should have one. But anyways, it feels like sometimes if you ignore the monitor, all we're doing is just trying to, like, calm patients and, you know, put, you know, washcloths on their forehead and make sure they roll over. I mean, we're doing a lot of, like, nanny care almost, but that it is kind of, for these patients that are not intubated, it's like a work in a whole different way that we're not used to.
Are
you finding that kind of like we always learned in traumas, like the younger people can maintain longer, and then just crash? Are you finding that the younger people are like that?
So we're getting, like, I think, better at not, like, waiting until they crash. I mean, this was, like, the hard thing, like, really this decision, like, I don't know which drugs work, because I haven't been able to, you know, I feel like it's hard to tell, but I don't really have stock in any of them. So whatever the hospital tells me to give, I'll give. It seems like everyone I intubate is on azithromycin and hydrochloroquine. So I'm not, but I feel like, this decision of when to intubate was like the most important and the most distressing. It's the single most distressing decision I've ever made as an ER doctor, because like literally you got to know them and they're talking to you and they may not feel bad. And they haven't seen their family in days. You're talking and you're staring into what could be like a 70% mortality. So it's, so now we've said, and I think it's really important to make it like a 2 attending decision. So neither of you feels like too responsible, and you just back each other up, because then you hear what happens, a day later, 2 days later, Mr. Whatever, and you feel something. So, but we're trying now not to like wait too long. But yeah, it's the same thing. It's like the young people were like, if we just ride them out, but then they're the people who also seem to do better on the vent. So everything is just, it's hard to know what to do sometimes. And that's a hard position for us not to know what to do.
Yeah, the whole sepsis thing tells us to flood them with fluids, and then they were saying, no, keep them really dry. But what you're saying is now kind of somewhere in the middle with the fluids?
Now, yeah, so everything's like gentle. So it's like we're, don't flood them with fluids and don't let them get too dry, and don't. So we're like, so what we're kind of doing is while they're in this like fever stage, I just said like, 1 bolus per shift, for like a 12-hour shift. 1 bolus per shift, and try to get them to eat or drink, so we're like coaxing them to eat or drink. And that's kind of where we left it. Nothing too aggressive. You're running them out of maintenance fluid? So we're not, because partly I feel like you never know if the maintenance is going to like continue, and if a nurse like, if the bag's done, are they going to put another one up? And I think probably not. So it was just easier, like 1 slow bolus per shift is kind of what we're doing.
I agree. And
so I can't hear.
Yeah, Comilla, you're really hard to hear for some
I'm
reason.
gonna move it a little closer. Sorry. I was just gonna say, so it's also really interesting to think about these patients having been away from all of their families for so long, and then now you're having to make the decision about the vent with somebody who's on their way to possibly needing a vent, and then you have no idea. You don't really have a way for them to see their family. Like we had a situation today where we were talking about, how do you let somebody have those last few minutes or moments with their family? And I think that's something different. Yeah.
They do seem to get to kind of death's door and then like, oh, well, maybe you're not dying right this second. Or,
yeah. Have you guys?
So we're trying hard to figure out when to make that call, because they're allowing us to very gingerly have a few moments with a family member if we think we're on that side.
So we're basically, they're getting on FaceTime on the phone with their family before, and it's a tough decision. I feel like we're lucky because we have high flow, and so we're given a little bit more time, and it actually is a decent way to judge exactly how hypoxemic they are. As long as you can watch them, you can say, okay, like, so for us, when they're on high flow and they require 80% to achieve a SAT of 88 or 90, they're like priority 1, meaning they may need to be intubated, and we will intubate them when they are in distress, which is generally tachypneic and anxious, but it's hard to know. And then we say if they have a SAT sustained under 80, consider intubation, but none of it is like a hard rule. We had a guy who was like, SATing 69 and was like not anxious and not tachypneic. So what do you do? But and that's why we still have to kind of just think about it. But it's a very tough decision, and we still don't know. Like we have patients. Oh, maybe we should have not done it. It's just a tough.
How did you tell the high flow nasal cannula to your staff, right? Because that's an aerosol generating procedure, and I feel like that's been something we've been dealing with. Like everything's about aerosol generating proceders, and so like, how did you sell that to anybody?
I think it's somehow just. It's like in the beginning, I feel like everyone was. We were more worried, and then it just somehow. I guess as things built up, it just somehow now I feel like we're just kind of. We're like bagging patients with a viral filter, but it's much less, we're much less cautious. And I think people have kind of just accepted the risk. Many people have gotten sick, and they've gotten sick and come back, but somehow it spread through and it is allowed. I mean, we have like 15 high flows probably just at any given time. It uses a tremendous amount of oxygen. That's one thing you know, if smaller hospitals need to know, it uses a lot more oxygen than a vent. And so if you're going to embrace high flow, you got to secure your oxygen supply.
You also have a rapport built with your staff to, you know, we don't know any of these people, you know, we've sent us nurses and we got RTs that don't believe in proning, you know, I mean, we have these people from around the country of all sorts of specialties, and at least, you know, maybe your nurses and your techs and all, and they trust you somewhat. They look at us like we're crazy sometimes.
Yeah,
like,
no,
I'm not getting there doing that.
Yeah, I agree. You got staff from all over the United States. We have people that came to help us, and you know,
one of our guys is with you, Caleb, right now, as a matter of fact.
Nice. Oh, that's right. I talked with him.
Eric.
He said, "Yep, Eric." You know, he said, "Hey, can I come over and help them?" So we're thankful for that. But you know, I do have to say that the oxygen is an issue, because the alarms that are built into the wall that tell you when oxygen is low will start going off. You know, so you're sitting there, and it's, the oxygen alarms are going off, and one of the nurses or one of the residents will just go up and push it, says, you know, just silences it, and you know.
Are you running out of your tanks?
I mean, that's the big thing. If you lose their oxygen, we're done. Like that's not the only thing we have.
Nothing.
See, we got a semi outside, and I have no idea how long that'll last. This is new to me. You know, we just have one of those big old tanks outside.
Yeah, they're replacing the tanks daily, so they're doing that daily. But it's not just the tanks; the in-wall oxygen runs low.
Jeez.
So that's the craziness. I mean, it's insane, you know. But again, I think it just highlights the importance of changing the way we do things. You know, this is not something where we can. I think you have to accept the fact that you're going to get a B on the test. You're not going to get an A+. I think that's just the way to look at it. You know, this is not something where you know, we even know what we're up against. You know, one thing I do suspect though is that this virus is destroying hemoglobin. It's destroying it, and I think that's probably part of the reason why we got these hypoxias and things don't make sense, because you're getting what looks like rhabdo, but it's probably destroyed blood coming out the kidneys. You got oxygen that's just not binding to hemoglobin for some reason. And yeah, so this virus has got to be affecting the blood's ability to carry oxygen. It's destroying the lungs. You're getting all these blood clots. And when you look at it, something's happening to the blood. And I don't know if this virus is destroying the actual red blood cells, or if it's destroying the heme, or if it's, but we're checking ferritin levels on these people, and the ferritin levels are through the roof. And so it's like, well, how does that happen? You know, how does, you know, and so I know
we're able to get CBCs.
What's that?
We look at your ferritins. We're able to get CBCs out here.
That's right.
Honestly, crazy. Like the dreams and ferritin that we're just watching and going, oh my gosh.
I mean, honestly, we're getting all this CRP, and it doesn't change anything. We're like, you know, one day we're gonna look back and we're gonna see what we should have known. That'll be great, you know. But,
exactly. Get it so that you can figure it out in a year from now, right?
But that's really why we're getting it, you know. And then even all the top critical care people at the hospital are saying, okay, well, I guess if their D dimers above 3,000, then we'll fully anticoagulate them. But it's not based on, you know. It's just what people think is the best thing, you know.
I think one thing that would be very helpful right now, we're overwhelmed in these hospitals, and that's probably part of the reason why we feel so comfortable exposing ourselves to high flow oxygen and aerosolization procedures, is because you do the first one and you think, I'm going to break protocol because we got to save this person. And then you start doing it, and then next thing you know, you're doing it 80 times your shift. You know, you're just doing it over and over. You're entering a totally infected COVID zone every single time. But I think because we're so overwhelmed, it would be awesome if we could somehow pool this data with Epic or whatever we're using, and have other people who are really smart across the United States analyze it and try to figure out what the heck's going on. I think that would be massive. You know, if we could take this data and say, okay, here's 1,000 of our ICU COVID patients, and here's their blood work, and here's how it progressed, and here's the ferritin levels, and here, just right now, we're too busy trying to save lives to really make sense of what's going on. And I think we need people who are in areas that aren't hit as hard to take this and process it and be like, oh yeah, this is Addison's or something, whatever, you know, we like figure it out, you know, because we don't have time to figure it out. We're trying, and but I think we do need somebody somewhere in the United States to figure out what's going on. And that's the big bummer, is that China didn't share anything with us. And I think Italy is too busy to share stuff. You know, they're sharing the clinical picture, but like the blood work itself holds so many keys to what's going on. And I think we need to be able to share this data and
Well,
say like,
hopefully
hey,
we probably will have 1,000 emergency docs watch this. And so, maybe there's someone out there who wants to spearhead this from, the middle of the country somewhere. So thanks for bringing that up. That's awesome. And we kind of rounding up here on close to an hour. And so I just wanted to, I'm a lifestyle medicine person as well. I just want to make sure that you guys are taking the time to care for yourselves as well. And eating and trying to sleep and trying to move your body in some way, and drink water and be thoughtful about yourself and this trauma that you guys are going through, and making sure that you're dealing as it moves on so that it doesn't become a bigger issue later. So just want to plug my mama thoughts in there for you guys.
Yeah.
And Heather, if I could say one thing to our colleagues that are watching from around the New York area, and I'll be as PC about it as I can. There is a lot of politics that are involved in some of these things, but I want y'all to know that places like us, I am overwhelmed with physicians right now that are here to take care of sick patients. We have beds here at the Billie Jean King Center. We are fully mission capable. We have vents. We've got enough sedatives to put down the entire zoo. I mean, like we're ready. And so, Caleb, we have lots of energy, lots of folks that came here to help. And so there is some red tape involved, and I'm not going to go much further than that, but you guys know on the front lines that there is a way you can get your patients to us. Okay. So Caleb, Eric was texting me from the ER the other day, like, hey, I've got patients that could come to you. We can take them if they're on ventilators. We can take them if they're not on ventilators yet, but might get on them. We have pulmonologists, we got critical care doctors, anesthesiologists, ER physicians, ID doctors, that are all sick of playing Candy Crush, okay? Like, we are ready. And so we have some patients and we're taking care of them, but we can take care of the sick patients too. And we're here to offload the load that is on y'all, so you can get some rest, so you can get your hospital back, so you can get your cafeteria back, so.
And Mike, what kind of volume are you guys talking about being able to handle? Just so we understand.
Yeah, hundreds. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
we could process them through.
We'll go get them right now if you want.
Yeah, I'll get them. Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's awesome. Get that out there. And I'm assuming that, can you share how they could get a hold of you to make that happen?
So the truth is, I don't know on the hospital. The directors of the departments know how to get there. So I keep using this analogy, like if I'm the director here and Caleb was the director where he's at, like, you think it'd be really easy to just say, hey, Mike, I got a patient to come over there, but there's not. You got to go up this chain of command, across. It's like really high levels, maybe not the,
6 o'clock.
What's that?
I don't know what that was.
Okay, but it's like, it goes up, maybe not all the way to the EOC, the Operations Center of New York, but it's pretty high, and then it comes back down the chain, Right now, I'm personally reviewing every single case that's presented. And unless they have like something terrible that they're going to give to everybody else in this building, or they're confirmed COVID negative, we'll take them. I don't care what state they're in. We will take your patients.
Awesome. That's great. Good. Well, you guys, thank you so much for taking the time to join. I know you guys are at the end of a long shift, and I know Cameron and Caleb, you guys are probably working like crazy every day. And again, this is emotionally challenging for us, professionally challenging for us, physically challenging for us. Do the best you can to stay well, and keep informing us so that we can help make things better from afar and help support you however we can. And Cameron, thank you so much. Caleb, thanks so much. KK, as always.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks today for being our streamer, KK. Zoom let me down.
You guys all for everything that you're doing, all of you.
Thanks.
Likewise.
KK, can you